Dennis here from Dennis Story Recap. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be looking at a comedy romance drama called What Every French Woman Wants. Roger, a 16-year-old, aspires to lose his Though his initial attempts are fruitless, World War I begins and all the men in town, together with the soldiers, advance towards the conflict. Now presented with numerous romantic prospects, Roger flies off the handle. Now imagine yourself being the only male specimen in the whole town, packed with a lot of women, urge-driving women. Let's find out how Roger plays that out.
It's the year 1914 and 16-year-old Roger is being driven on the horse carriage by Mrs. Mueller as he is just arriving from boarding school. Roger begins looking at her cleavage during the ride, and when she catches him staring, he smiles shyly as she laughs out loud. Roger arrives at the house and is greeted by a dog who is gnawing at his jacket. Ursula runs out and apologizes for the dog's behavior. Ursula asks Roger if he remembers her as he has been gone for 3 years, and Roger says he does. Roger's mother and his aunt Marguerite come out to greet him, and his mother reprimands him for his dirty clothes. Ursula blames Roger's dirty clothes on the dog and goes to get a cloth to clean it. Marguerite takes the cloth from Ursula and wipes the dirt off his clothes. Mr. Frank, a friend of Roger's father, waves at Roger's mother from his bedroom window at the house. They go into the house and he is greeted warmly by his younger sister Bertha. They go to the garden to play and they run into Mrs. Mueller. She tells Roger that she came out to pick up some apples for him. She hands him the basket of apples and they take a walk through the grounds. They run into Mrs. Muller's husband, Gustavo, and he grunts in response after Roger greets him as they continue on their walk. Madame Muller stops Roger as she raises her skirt to pee right in front of him, surprising Roger. On his walk through the grounds alone the next day, he sees Gustavo place her picture on a gravesite, and Roger watches as he unzips his pants to place flowers on his crotch. As Gustavo kneels down to pray, Roger makes noise with his step, alerting him, and this causes Roger to run away. Roger stumbles on the way and bumps into Ursula, having a hormone sandwich with Adolphe, one of the workers. Ursula is singing during the act, and when she spots Roger, she greets him and laughs, making Roger run off again. While at dinner, Roger's mother discusses that Elisa, her eldest child, would be arriving with her fiancé soon. She asks Hélène, their maid, to bring a picture of Elisa and her fiancé together, and she shows Mr. Frank. Bertha then takes the picture from him, and after joking about it, her mother calls Bertha's governess, Kate, to help Bertha to bed. Roger decides to go to bed shortly after and says goodnight to his aunt Marguerite, Mr. Frank, and his mother. As he changes into his night clothes, he hears a sound. When he goes to check it out, he sees Hélène having a hormone sandwich through the doorway, but cannot see who is behind the door with one of their male workers. As he goes back to his room, he sees Bertha in his bed. She tells Roger that she isn't sleepy and asks to stay in his room. Roger agrees after she promises not to talk. After they say goodnight to each other, Bertha asks Roger if their Aunt Marguerite is beautiful, as she, being a virgin at her age, is not normal. Roger asks if Marguerite has ever been engaged, and Bertha says no. He asks Bertha about Hélène and recalls her having injection games, causing him to have a stiff third leg. Bertha alerts him to it and tells him that she knows what a hard third leg is, because she's been taught by Kate. Roger tells Bertha that there are a lot of women in the house, and Bertha tells him that she hates it. Kate catches Bertha in Roger's room and sends her out. When Kate tries to reprimand Roger, she notices his stiff third leg and asks him what he's thinking about, embarrassing Roger. Once she leaves, Roger mutters that he would never sleep again. Bertha and Roger spy on Mrs. Mueller, Hélène, and Ursula as they go to the riverside to relax after work. Mrs. Mueller complains to the ladies that Gustavo still can't get it up, and she wouldn't be suffering like this if she wasn't in love with him. Some men from town run into the ladies, and after commenting on their beauty, the men proceed to pee right in front of them. Ursula and Hélène laugh at their small third legs, and the men tell Ursula that they need to see her bosom. She raises her skirt to show her bare bosom twice, causing everyone present to laugh and shocking Roger, who is still spying on them. Roger's father arrives with Elisa and is being greeted by his family. Roger says hi to Elisa, and she kisses him on his forehead, causing Roger to be downcast. Roger's father discusses the oncoming war at lunchtime with the rest of his household. He expresses his regret of having to retire when he could have become a general because of an injury to his leg. Mrs. Mueller and Ursula are working on the farm with Roland, and Roger tries to get a peek under Ursula's skirts while she's climbing up a ladder. Adolph spots him and throws hay at his face, laughing at Roger. On his way back home, Roger sees Bertha and she asks him if he has ever been to confession, and he says no. Bertha tells him that she goes, but she never tells Father Gabriel everything. Bertha then takes Roger to a spot in the church building where she listens to other people confessing. Bertha then decides to leave, but encourages Roger to stay, as the confessions are usually entertaining. Marguerite walks in and confesses to Father Gabriel that she has been thinking of having injection games with workers on the farm, and more recently, her nephew, surprising Roger. Father Gabriel is dozing off as she talks about playing with her bosom to the image of Roger unclothed. When he begins snoring, Marguerite wakes him up and encourages her to continue. As Roger moves closer to try and hear more, the plank he is resting on gives way and he falls right on Father Gabriel. Roger is sent home and asked to strip his trousers in front of his family just as Mr. Roland, Elisa's fiancé, arrives. He is held down by Adolphe and flogged by Marguerite. Bertha goes to Roger's bedroom at night and consoles him. Before she leaves, she tells him to think about their aunt's confession. Roger hears Helene uttering bedroom noises and goes to spy on her having an injection game. He then sees Mr. Frank playing with his third leg as he is also watching Helene. He sees Roger and is embarrassed as he walks away after Helene leaves. Roger goes to the doorway to try and catch a glimpse of who Helene has been sleeping with. Ursula startles him by touching his bum and asks him if it still stings. He tells her he feels better and asks her if she knows who Helene has been having injection games with. Ursula tells Roger that it is a mystery and she doesn't know. She goes into the attic and sees Mr. Frank using a telescope. Mr. Frank quickly adjusts his robe and excuses himself, leaving Roger alone. Roger uses the telescope and sees that Mr. Frank was spying on a couple having a roll on the grass unclothed. He sees a Kama Sutra book on the floor where he's standing, and he picks it up. He looks through it, very intrigued. He overhears his parents having a hormone sandwich and is caught by Mr. Roland when he tries to spy on them. Romano threatens to report Roger to his parents if he doesn't wash his car, and Roger accepts. After washing Roland's car, Roger goes to the barn to tug with his bosom with the Kama Sutra book. He is interrupted by Adolphe bringing hay to the barn. When Helene comes, Adolphe and Helene have an injection game, aware that Roger's watching. Roger goes back to the house, and after Elisa mocks him for picking his nose, he switches her novel with the Kama Sutra book and leaves without her noticing because they have the same color bind. After Roger refuses to shine Roland's boots, Roland tells on Roger to his mother. Upset, Roger's mother sends him to his room. He sees Elisa pick up the Kama Sutra book as he leaves, and he smiles. Elisa takes a liking to the Kama Sutra book and begins reading it every chance she gets, being watched the whole time by Roger. Roger goes to meet Ursula in the kitchen and smashes a plate on his head after he tries to grab her by the waist. Apologetic afterwards as she didn't know it was Roger, Ursula cleans him up. After asking Ursula about how the first time having injection games would feel like, they are interrupted by the cook and Roger leaves. He sees Mrs. Muller moving towards the barn and decides that he must lose his nuts today. He follows her into the building after she greets him. He grabs her by the waist, and just as they are about to have a hormone sandwich, they're interrupted by the news of war being declared. Roger goes to the house to see his family celebrating. Elisa says goodbye to Roland as he's being called up. He asks her to wait for him, and she promises to, as long as he doesn't take unnecessary risks. All the men have been called up, except for Mr. Frank, who suffers from asthma, and all the ladies in town bid them farewell. The next day, Ursula asks for Roger's help moving furniture around the house, and Bertha spies on them. Once alone, Roger tries to rub lips with Ursula, but she stops him. He tries to touch her bosom, and she laughs at him. She undresses and exclaims at the size of Roger's third leg, impressed. They have a hormone sandwich. Excited afterwards, he tells Ursula he is in love with her and wants to marry her. Afterwards, he sees Bertha, and he tells her he just lost his nuts, but he refuses to tell her who he lost it to. Bertha tells Roger that their mother is having confession with Father Gabriel, and they listen as she describes the weird sexual antics she and their father get up to. Roger and Bertha are caught when Bertha laughs out loud. Kate is by the riverside relaxing when Roger swims towards her unclothed, surprising Kate. After playing together for a while, Roger gives her a fellatio. Elisa rushes out holding a newspaper praising Roland for downing another plane. Roger asks his parents and Marguerite what caused the war, but none of them are able to say. Later that night, Roger catches Kate and Marguerite spying on his parents. Roger opens the door and takes a seat as he watches his parents roleplay. He is caught by his father and he leaves. Roger goes to his aunt's bedroom, and when she asks him what he wants, he tells her he wants a goodnight kiss. After she pecks him, he tells her that he wants a proper kiss. Upset, she tells him to leave her room. Frank knocks on the door before Roger can leave to give a poem to Marguerite. So that Roger isn't caught in her room, Marguerite tells Frank that he should recite the poem through the door and that she would be listening. Roger goes to meet his aunt and asks her if she is still a celibate pup and tells her that he is not anymore. He leads her to bed and Elisa gives him a fellatio while Frank is still reciting the poem. The next day, Roger sees Frank at the attic looking at some weird pictures. Roger advises Frank to try having an injection game with someone as it is easy, but Frank tells him that it's easy for Roger and that he should be grateful that all the men in town have gone to war. Later that night, Helene goes to meet Roger in his room and lets him know that she has been Gustavo's lover, and since he has gone to war, he should have a hormone sandwich with her, and Roger obliges. Bertha tells Roger the next day at the garden that she knows he has enjoyed Ursula, Kate, and Helene bosoms. She asks if Roger has had hormone sandwich with her aunt yet, and he tells her almost. Elisa rides a horse past them, and Roger joins her at the stables. He offers to help her take off her boots and tells her to take a seat. He tells her to undress and begins taking her clothes off. Mrs. Mueller walks in just as Elisa tries to stop Roger. They have a hormone sandwich without Mrs. Mueller noticing them. Bertha sees Roger and Elisa come out of the stable separately, but still figures out they had injection games and starts laughing. Ursula and Helene go to Roger's room shortly after, and they have a hormone sandwich with him. After Helene leaves, Roger is joined by Marguerite and Kate, and all four of them enjoy injection games. Ursula leaves afterwards. On a picnic with Elisa the next day, she tells Roger that she is pregnant. Roland arrives shortly after and is given a hero's welcome at the house. He tells Elisa that he has been promoted to captain. All the men return from war. Adolphe returns from the war with a bad leg, and Mrs. Mueller gets word that Gustavo died during the war. Ursula tells Roger that she is pregnant too. Ursula tells Roger that she can't marry Adolphe as he isn't attractive with a crippled leg, but she would pin it on another worker, Valentine, who returned with a bad eye. Roger asks Ursula to help him get red nail polish. Marguerite comes to Roger's room to tell him that she is pregnant as well. Roger advises his aunt to get married to Frank, and that would solve the problem. Ursula returns with the red nail polish, and they put a few drops on Elisa's white bedsheets. Roger tells Ursula to go to his room, and he tells Elisa after Ursula leaves to seduce Roland into having a hormone sandwich with her. Roger goes to Kate's room to ask her if she is pregnant. Roger is relieved when she says no. Ursula, Elise, and Marguerite have their weddings to their respective partners shortly after. Roger is moving to town with his father, and he bids his lovers farewell. He tells Ursula that he would never forget her. As he goes to get his bags, he discovers Helene is pregnant as well. He asks her to get married, but she tells him it is not necessary. Afterwards, he bids the rest of his family farewell, and his mother reminds him that there are many temptations in the city for a young man, especially during the war. Talk about temptation when this kid clearly smashed all the maids in the house.